good evening, and on behalf of Brookings India and Penguin India, a warm welcome to all who have come here. A special welcome to former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh and Union Finance Minister Mr. Arun Jaitley, and the eminent people who are here, writers whose pieces are in the book, as well as all the others. I thank you very much for being here, and a warm welcome. Brookings India was formed 4 years ago. So in that sense, we are still not the correct age to be in kindergarten, but we have a very intense research program. We focus on policy issues which are relevant to India, led by Indians. This institution is looking at diverse areas like foreign policy, energy, health, education, trade, industrial policy, and trying to expand upon the information base which is available to the general public as well as other stakeholders. This book is a very special part of that effort. We'll get to know more about it. So I, once again, welcome everyone, and I would like now to invite on stage the editor of the book, Dr. Rakesh Mohan, former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, and Union Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, and the head of Penguin India, Meru Gokhale, so that we can begin the discussion. Thank you very much.
I would like to add my words of welcome to all of you. It's really heartwarming to see so many friends, family, colleagues, ex-colleagues. I guess I can't say any more future colleagues. Your presence here indicates the warm support that I've always enjoyed in everything that I've done for a very, very long time. Let me start by giving you some idea of the motivation behind the compilation of this book. As we entered 2016, and as I came back from the IMF as executive director, I had to babysit Brookings India because the government, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, appointed Shubir Gokaran as my successor at the IMF. And he was the executive director for Brookings India, so I had to fill space while he got appointed in my place. And of course, my key job was to find a successor, so I did, and I found Dr. Harsha Singh sitting in Geneva and brought him back from Geneva. As I was doing that, Vikram Mehta, the chairman of Brookings India, suggested, he said, we should do something to mark the 25th anniversary of economic reforms that started in 1991. And so we put our heads together, and I thought, what should we do? Certainly we thought that it was clearly a good time to reflect and chronicle the kind of change that has taken place in the country as a consequence of the reform process that started in 1991. It also occurred to me that since 25 years had passed, anyone under the age of 40 really had no idea of the kind of transformative change that has taken place in the economic sphere in the country over this period. And so it was a good idea, for their benefit in particular, in terms of essential, to really provide a broad view of what has really happened over this time, what reforms were carried out, what were they intended to do, what has really happened, and how they've affected the overall functioning of the economy. What were expectations in 1991, what has been achieved, not achieved, maybe overachieved. That the reform process succeeded in accelerating the growth rate of India to an average of almost 7%, not quite, almost 7%. We haven't yet had 20 years average of 7% growth. There's a very small band of select countries which have done that. We have not yet quite reached that, but we've almost done it. And that is indeed a huge achievement which does need to be appreciated. The documentation of this change should provide us, and the important point in a sense is that the documentation of this change should provide us with the confidence in the power of policy change to initiate accelerated growth in the country. And if we can understand the power of policy change, if we have gone from 3.5% growth in the first 30 years after independence to then almost 7% in the last 25 years, why not 10, Mr. Jaitley, over the next 25 years? And in some sense, the point I'm making is that we also thought that doing this, providing this information, ought to give us much more confidence in our ability to make such change. This book then is intended to provide both an understanding of what has happened in the past and inspire confidence in our ability to continue such a process of change in the future. Apart from celebrating the change that has taken place, the transformation that has taken place, also to remind ourselves of what has not happened. And that, unfortunately, is to do with crucial areas like health, education, and agriculture. And that if we are to go ahead, we have to pay much, much more attention to those areas, and we have indeed focused on those in the book as well. I'm delighted, of course, that former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh has honored us by his presence and for agreeing, of course, to release this book. It is entirely appropriate that it is Dr. Manmohan Singh who is releasing this Chronicle of 25 Years of Reforms, which he initiated as Finance Minister in 1991. He was responsible, as everyone knows, for the overall design and vision that underlay the whole reform process that we observed over this whole period. As he stated in the 1991 budget speech, quoting Victor Hugo at that time, "No power on earth, sir, as you said, can stop an idea whose time has come." This is what you said in your first budget speech. Our country, of course, was lucky that it was Dr. Manmohan Singh who was in the right place at the right time to implement the idea that then set in motion the process which has truly transformed the country. If I may add a personal note, Dr. Manmohan Singh was Member Secretary of the Planning Commission when I first came back to the country after 16 years abroad in 1980. The welcome, incidentally, he doesn't know about this, the welcome that I got from the Chief of Administration in the Planning Commission was as follows: "Why have you come? Is there something wrong with you? Is there something wrong with your family? Are you sane to have left a job in the World Bank to come here?" So that was a welcome I received at that time. Unlike now, the bureaucracy was not exactly welcoming, as I said, for even a young person coming back to the country to work in the government. It was really Dr. Singh's encouragement that then sustained me at that time. When he returned to the Planning Commission later as the Deputy Chairman, I had gone back after my leave from the World Bank at that time, and he then asked me to join the Commission as Economic Advisor. I complied with alacrity in 1986. That then was the beginning of a most rewarding engagement with Indian economic policy in and out of the government for almost 30 years. I then, of course, had the privilege of working very closely with him and the whole team engaged in the 1991 initiation of reforms. I therefore owe him a personal debt of gratitude for inspiring me throughout my career. One of the key features of this process of economic reforms the last 25 years is the incredible continuity in economic strategy over this whole period across 6 prime ministers and as it happens, 6 finance ministers, Mr. Jaitley being the 6th since 1991. I also thought yesterday, Mr. Minister, that you're the first finance minister in the country who's younger than I am. So I hope that I can take some liberties with you as the first finance minister who is indeed younger than I am. His presence here at the launch of this book signifies the overall consensus that I do believe underlies our country's economic strategy, even though this is not always apparent in our noisy and argumentative polity. Let me just illustrate this by mentioning the key transformative reform that you, Mr. Jaitley, are currently implementing, and that is the implementation of the full-scale goods and services tax. This is the culmination of a real, very long process of thinking on gradual tax reform over almost 35 years. I understand that the initial idea of mentioning the value-added tax was perhaps first proposed by the L.K. Jha committee in the early 1980s. It was then put in policy in the form of MODVAT in the long-term fiscal policy announced by Finance Minister V.P. Singh in the Rajiv Gandhi government in the late 1980s. Another decade of indirect tax reforms, finally under Dr. Manmohan Singh, finally culminated in the formulation of SENVAT about a decade later by Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha in the late 1990s, and with almost constituted a full-scale VAT up to the production stage under the central government. The next decade saw the innovation of the Empowered Committee of State Finance Ministers constituted by then Finance Minister Mr. Yashwant Sinha, which resulted in the implementation of the state VAT systems. And that was implemented, it was initiated by Mr. Yashwant Sinha, but was implemented by Mr. Chidambaram as Finance Minister. Finally, you, sir, Mr. Jaitley, succeeding implementing the GST, even though the work was started under Mr. Chidambaram. So I'm just giving one example of the kind of continuity in strategy and policy that we have enjoyed in the country across many governments. One can give, as I said, many other examples of this continuous process. So therefore, your presence here is of great significance for us and for me personally. And we know that you have taken out time from a very important meeting the Prime Minister has called this evening, so we're very grateful for that. Let me now come back to the book. As is obvious, this book is very, very much a collective effort, just as the reform process has been a collective effort between the government and the private sector. Through my 30 years being in and around the government, I've had the good fortune of being associated in different ways with each of the remarkable individuals who have contributed to this book, and I think about 18 out of 31 authors are present here today. This book brings together 31 technocratic leaders who have participated in this exciting endeavor of nation building since the early 1990s. This includes some of the key policymakers and advisors, academics, industry leaders, opinion makers, and commentators. Each of them has made key contributions over this period to bring India where it is today. They've worked in respective fields consistently and retained their credibility and commitment across a succession of diverse governments of different political persuasions of almost every different color. They have displayed professionalism of the highest order in their respective areas of operations. I'm delighted, of course, with all the authors who are here. Would you mind raising your hand, all the authors, so everyone can see how many are here? Hence, my heartfelt appreciation for this act of friendship expressed by each of the contributors. I have to say that I harassed all of them. I sent back their draft at least 3 times, and that was before our Penguin chief, Meru Gokhale, and her team got into action and harassed them even more than I did, at least 3 times after that. So I don't think they knew this was what they were getting into when they agreed. So once again, thank you very much, and thank all who are here. So may I now request former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh to kindly release the book.